Wednesday night live stream. We are talking about something very interesting. We're talking about time in the spirit world, which I'll quickly say there is not a concept of time. There is no time actually passing like the clock ticking. But tonight we're talking about an NDE of living 2,500 years in 8 minutes. And this is very interesting. Now, this is in my book, The Spirit World Talks to Us, 12 Accounts from Near-Death and Other Experiences. And of course, what I do is I take NDEs, near-death experiences, and other types of experiences, and I explain what's happening behind the curtain through the philosophy and the doctrine of Spiritism and what I have read and absorbed and heard from other Spiritists from many, many books. And I put this in this book, The Spirit World Talks to Us, 12 Accounts from Near Death and Other Experiences. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what was happening. Now, this is a fascinating account. So a young man had an asthma attack at 9:15 p.m. and at 9:23 p.m., 8 minutes, the attack had passed. But for him, he thought he had spent 2,500 years in the spirit world. Now, he was not particularly a spiritual person. He was rooted in the rational world. And his name was Anthony. He garnered an understanding of life that most of us never achieved through that experience. His vision was posted on the NDERF, Near-Death Experience Research Foundation.org, NDERF.org website, which is a wonderful website. It contains many accounts of NDEs experienced by people of every country, language, and culture. So this is what he wrote. Everything is of one. Everything is part of everything else. On a more practical level, whilst I was there, any knowledge I wanted, I immediately knew. When I came back, a lot of this knowledge stayed with me. I knew the answers to things intuitively without having to study. So this is what we know from Spiritist literature, is that we are connected. In fact, I talk a lot about this in my book 2, Spirits and the Spirit Universe, on the attributes of spirits. And what we are told is the spirit realm is thought. Thought is action. Now, here on Earth, we move. We have to think to move. We have to think to build a house. We have to get the natural resources. In the spirit realm, you think, you bring together universal fluid, and you start building a house or whatever you want to be. Thought is reality, and thoughts emanate from each spirit, each being, flowing out faster than the speed of light for any spirit to capture. To be a spirit is to be immersed in a living data bank full of information from a quasi-infinite amount of planets, spiritual and physical beings, animal, vegetable, liquid, and solid. All what we consider matter in whatever form vibrates and holds its shape due to thoughts that have created it and maintains it. This is so important. The origin and power of thought was revealed in the book Life Beyond the Veil in the Lowlands of Heaven section. And the book was psychographed in the 1920s. Psychograph means a spirit tells a medium what to write. And the medium, of course, was the Reverend G. Vaon, I've talked a lot about. And this was the communication from the spirit astral and the spirit world that introduced the foundation of creation and the reason for variety within our universe. This is what the spirit astral said. The heavenly bodies are the expression in matter of ideas originating among those high in the heavenly spheres of creative power. They are all in each the effect of thoughts and impulses proceeding from those spheres. When a world is in process of creation, those high beings are constantly energizing and projecting into the forming matter their spiritual influence and, so to speak, character. Thus, although the planets of your system are all conformable to one great scheme of unity, they are diverse in their individual characteristics. These characteristics answer to the characters of the great lords in whose charge they severally are. Astronomers are correct when they say that certain of the elements which go to form the Earth are found, say, in Mars and Jupiter and in the Sun itself. But they would err if they should say that they are found in the same proportion or in the similar combination. Every planet differs in scheme, which governs them as a system. What is here said of the units which go to make up the solar system may be applied to the wider range of things. Considering the solar realm as a unit, it is not identical either in composition of elements or to planetary constitution with other systems. Each differs from its fellow also. What is he telling us? And there's so much information here. The great lords are those spirits who have traveled up the long ladder of improvement. They, at one time or another, have experienced each of the stages of reincarnation on different types of planet. Where are we now? Well, we on Earth are on the second stage. Earth is a planet of atonement, where we pay for our past wrongs in order to learn to follow the path of love, charity, and fraternity. I mean, we wonder why so many terrible things happen to us and maybe our friends. This is why we live on a place where we have to get used to that and learn to get rid of all of our primitive emotions and replace them with good emotions: love, honesty, charity. So again, the great lords that Astral is talking about, they have been where we have been. They have traversed the entire reincarnation process to become pure spirits. No longer do they need to don a physical form, which we are in now. The great lords know God in a way in which we are unable of comprehending at this point in time. As in any complex organization, there are layers upon layers of management and workers. Presently, at our stage, we aren't capable of contributing to the ongoing process of creation. Presently, we are being trained for the work ahead. First, as I said before, we must learn to control our emotions, feelings, and ideas. Our entire ratiocination process must be tamed and organized and disciplined. Only then can we take part in what Astro describes as the job of creation. This is what he says. It issues in the individual mind of the chief lord of the particular system. Under him are other great lords who work in unison with his one governing idea. But these also have freedom in those things which are under their charge, and so on downward to the minute things of creation, the flowers and trees and animals, and the formation of the face of the planet. It is on account of this latitude in creation and control that you have such diversity in detail. And because of the limit of restriction to the exercise of that free individuality, that you have the unity which you find interpenetrating every department and subdepartment of creation. What's he telling us? The work all flows down from the great lords to other great lords, to their ministers, to their managers, to the hands that handle the small details. Of course, we're not part of any of this because we're now just being trained to maybe do the small work at some time, not now. When we ascend from our planet of training, we shall be the one who set the ladders, lift the bricks up to the top floor, and mop up the remains as we acquire our knowledge through apprenticeship. Now let's go deeper into Anthony's near-death experience. So as this near-death experience unfolds, keep in mind the object of the spirit world. This is important in any interpretation of near-death experiences, and especially to your own visions, your own experiences, your own weird things that happen that you can't explain to anybody. Remember, the spirit world is communicating to you. It's all about helping you improve yourself. This is what I want you to keep in mind. We are on the school of Earth, learning to become productive. All NDEs contain this basic premise. Whatever occurs, whatever variety, visions, lessons departed, all revolve around a central theme. Push us to break free of our baser emotions and material attachments so we may become part of the community which manifests marvelous constructions. So, Anthony's journey started in his bedroom. This is what he wrote. I had just gone into my bedroom at 9:15 in the evening. I had turned my alarm on for the next morning and sat on the bed when I had a massive asthma attack. I fell back on the bed and tried to call out to my parents, but didn't have the breath. At the attack increased in severity, I found I couldn't move. This part was entirely conscious. As I blacked out, I guess through lack of oxygen, I heard a voice by my ear. The tone and cadence of the voice was one of absolute caring and totally calm, which was in stark contrast to the panic I was feeling at not being able to breathe. The voice was not mine. It told me not to worry. It was going to look after me and I was to follow it. At this point, I left my body and was looking down on myself, lying on the bed with my eyes open. I was now totally calm and unafraid. The voice told me it wanted to show me something, and I felt myself traveling very fast toward a light. As I went through the light, I found myself flying in another world. Very interesting. For a reason known only to the powers residing above us, it was determined at this precise juncture in Anthony's life he needed to be temporarily removed from class and given personal guidance. The voice was his mentor, his guardian angel, who decided, with the help of others like him, the location and method to instill in Anthony what he required at this particular point in his physical life so he can go on and be a better student. Anthony goes on. Everything in this other world was made of what I can only describe as liquid light. Everything was alive, the ground, the mountains, even the sky. The voice was still with me, and during this experience, never left me. It told me that where I was the real world, and that I had a job to do whilst I was there. I lighted on the side of a bare earth mountain. There were no trees, grass, or rivers. There was light everywhere, but no sun. The light seemed to come within everything, even the air. Now let's think about this. The land that Anthony was guided to was created by thought, just like our physical world, but more alive, more colors, colors that our human eyes have never seen, hues which are indescribable to mere mortals. Anthony's description is very similar to the one given by the spirit Andre Luis. Andre Luis was a doctor in Rio de Janeiro who died and lived for a time in the lower zone, a place where spirits who hadn't left behind their thirst for earthly goods and negative emotions stay for a time until it is determined that they are ready to ascend to the light. Andre was assisted to a heavenly city called Nosso Lar, which means our home in Portuguese. Then he talked about what it was like. This is how he described Nosso Lar, which was a city in heaven. The scenery in front of me was of sublime beauty. The forest was in full bloom, and fresh air was embalmed with an intoxication fragrance. It was all an extraordinary gift of color and mellow light. A large river wound its way leisurely between luxuriant grassy banks sprinkled with blue flowers. The water ran by so peacefully, so crystalline, that it seemed tinted in the blue sky, mirroring the color of the firmament. Wide pathways cut through the green landscape. Leafy trees were planted at regular intervals among them, offering friendly shade like pleasant shelters in the light of the comforting sun. Fanciful shaped benches invited one to rest. So his description of the vividness of the colors and the natural beauty parallels other descriptions of heaven by people who have had near-death experiences. Andre's tale comes to us via the work of the late great Spiritist Brazilian medium Francisco Chico Xavier, who psychographed a series of books from the spirit Andre Luis about his life in heaven. His first book was No Solar. I'd recommend you look that up. You can find it on Amazon. Now, what was Anthony's task? Why did they have that? So, as with every encounter with the spirit world, Anthony wasn't in that location by accident. It had a purpose, and so did he. His mentor proceeded to notify him what was expected. On this mountain, this is what he wrote. On this mountain, about halfway up, was a large boulder. On the boulder was a glowing golden brick. I know how this must sound, he says. The voice told me that I was to build a garden on the mountain, and that every year a brick would appear on the top of the boulder, and with the bricks I was meant to build a path up the mountain from the base to the boulder. I was told to plant trees which appeared as acorns, etc., at the top of the mountain. Now, think about giving those instructions. Just the phrase every year, wouldn't that sound alarm bells in anyone's head? Anthony was instructed to construct a brick trail with building supplies that arrived at a glacier pace. As an added task, he was to plant seeds that within his time on the mountain would grow to be trees. What possible result could be the object of such an effort? Why build so slowly? Why plant seeds that would become mighty trees? Well, Jesus preached to the multitudes about faith and the work involved to reach the narrow gates of heaven. He explained to them that the path to paradise is not a short walk, but a long trek. In Matthew chapter 13, verse 31 to 32, It said this. He presented another parable to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field. And this is smaller than all other seeds, but when it is full grown, it is larger than the garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds in the air come and nest in its branches. Now, Anthony may have been, at first, unaware of the symbolism of the quest he was to undertake. He was to learn firsthand the effort to ascend from a primitive soul to a perfected angel. He didn't hesitate to perform the job presented to him. This is what he wrote. I was there for a very long time, in which time the voice was always present. I never felt alone, and I never questioned why I was there. I was totally at peace, and feelings of absolute joy and unconditional love pervaded me the entire time. I knew that the voice was the most trustworthy thing in the universe. As the years passed, I watched the trees grow. The flowers and grass I planted also grew. The color of the flowers weren't of any color I'd ever seen. Like there was 20 different colors in the rainbow there. Let me stop there. Of course, we're told you can see things. Here on Earth, we can only see about 1/8 of the real world around us. We can't see all sorts of spectrums of light. When you're a spirit, you see much more. Let me carry on what he said. The colors of the flowers weren't of any color I've ever seen. Like there was 20 different colors in the rainbow there. I couldn't describe them as there's no frame of reference to what they look like. I was taught a lot of things and was able to, for want of a better phrase, to see into people's souls and understood in an instant all the ramifications of all our actions on each other. That anger is born of pain or fear, and many other teachings about what I now think as of the human condition. And then I saw everyone on the planet interconnected on these lines, and a feeling of such overwhelming love and empathy went through me. I felt like my heart was going to explode. Now, Anthony passed years, 2,500 years in solitude, but in his whole account, he never mentioned being lonely, for he had the voice of his mentor and the wonders of the results of the seeds he had planted and the benefits of the knowledge gained. Anthony was given the gift to understand that there isn't such thing as all good or bad, but that each human and spirit is a mixture. Only as we approach God in our spiritual quest do we become pure forgiveness, pure light, and pure love. God has embedded within each one of us a conscience. It is the complete set of divine laws. Our minds automatically interpret our action through this filter to alert us when we have done something wrong. This is why we have a conscience. When we reflect on an action, our conscience provides us feedback. We must listen to that advice and heed it, for within us we have centuries of stored wisdom. To those that consciously perform horrible acts have not yet built up the library, which explains the finer details of the divine laws and how they should be regarded in diverse circumstances. Or they have chosen to deliberately ignore what they know to be true in the hope that somehow they will escape the consequences. They will rationalize away their action. This avenue of denial only functions until the moment of physical death. Then they realize their mistake and will have to pay for their wrongs in the next life. Karma is real. Anthony was very blessed. He was granted a refresher course in the set of divine laws and allowed to take back with him in his physical body a heightened sense of justice and the conflicts that exist in others. With his awareness of the frailties of humans and their emotional turmoil, which constantly swirls around each of us, he will be able to calmly stand aside and choose the correct course of action when presented with emotional trauma. This is what the spirit world desires us to achieve, to love all with a caring passion. This doesn't mean that we must be weak or pushovers when we are wrong, only that we implement our actions with a level head and concentrate our energy on solving the problem. We should use indignation when confronted with a wrong instead of anger. Anger radiates harmful emotions and thoughts in all directions, while indignation creates a beam of thought focused on helping others, even though they may feel punished. Now, let's talk about time. So, time in our universe is not the same in the spirit universe. In fact, I had that in a message to me when they could tell that I was like, how come this isn't happening? They said, well, remember, time's not the same for us as it is for you. So, this is what Anthony wrote. The last brick appeared on the boulder some 2,500 years after I'd first arrived. I was aware of every year. This was not dreamlike. It was real time, if that makes any sense. The path now stretched from the base to the boulder, but over the years, the boulder had gradually changed shape and now looked square like some sort of altar. The trees I initially planted had grown, and the boughs and branches had arched, and the trunks thickened to form what I can only describe as a temple at the top of the mountain. The voice told me that the first part of my job was finished, and now I had to set foot upon the path. I went to the bottom of the mountain and put a foot onto the path. Now, let's talk about time. Time is a concept within our physical universe and within our own minds. We are told that time moves forward because the universe is expanding. If the universe contracts, then time would move backwards. All of us has heard of the variances in time that would be felt for a person remaining on Earth while a spaceship traveled to a faraway star and returned. Time would move slower for those going faster on the spaceship. Time felt is passage of time within our perception. When we are young, time moves slowly. An hour is a long time when you're young, and a day is an eternity. When we are older, a year seemingly passes within the space of a day. So, there's time in our physical universe, and it was created by God's will for a purpose. One can only speculate as to what that purpose could be. Now, in my opinion, it's to keep us moving forward in our lesson. It's just you go to school and you go to a lesson and the bell rings, and then you've got 5 minutes till you get your other class. Time is here. One is to keep us moving forward from lesson to lesson to life to life. So, time in the spirit world, of course, is different, or as some maintain, non-existent. Now, I read where one spirit says, you don't think of time, you think of duration. And I'll explain that. Let me kind of go back and what other spirits have said first. There is a constant message that time on earth doesn't relate to time in the spirit world. The subjective passage of time is addressed in one of the questions in the Spirit's book. Then, of course, the Spirit's book is really what everyone should read. That's Allan Kardec is the codifier of the Spirit's book, codifier of Spiritism. And this was the first message we got from the Spirit of Truth, which is the third revelation of what we are working on now. So this is very important. So, of course, Allan Kardec codified this from questions he posed to spirits from mediums across Europe, right? And only when more than 2 mediums received similar answers did Allan Kardec place result in the book. Now, question 1005, does time appear to the suffering spirit longer or shorter than in their earthly life? And the answer is, it appears longer. Sleep does not exist for him. It is only for spirits arrived at a certain degree of purification that time is merged, so to say, was infinity. So what are they telling us? For undeveloped spirits, time passes slowly. On the other hand, those spirits who have successfully completed their trials or removed their imperfection, time's not a factor. This is why when spirits communicate to us, placing events within time frames are difficult. And the timing event is usually placed in relation to another event, such as a birth or a death or a natural occurrence of some sort. A hint of the differences in time is in the book Understanding Spiritual and Mental Health by Divaldo Franco. The difference in perception is documented in a lecture given by him in the United States. At the end of his lecture, he told a story of a conversation he had with a spirit. That's what he said in his lecture. And then the spirit told me a joke. Spirits tells jokes. He said that several spirits were having conversation, and one of them told the story of a soul who went to God and asked, Lord, I have no idea what eternity means. For example, 1 billion years. How much time is that in the clock of eternity? And God answered, 1 billion years, 1 second. Then the soul asked, and Lord, $1 billion, how much is that worth to you? God answered, $1 billion, 1 cent. And then the soul asked God, Lord, could you spare me 1 cent? And God answered, wait, I'll give it to you in just a second. So, it might not be funny to us, but the spirits thought it was funny. Devaldo Franco is a spiritist. He is a medium who has helped many rid themselves of serious psychological problems with spiritual guidance. Therefore, I believe he was told the joke. Well, not that funny. It does point out the difference does indeed exist, and even spirits acknowledge the comedy. My personal belief, and I have no proof, is that instead of time in the spirit realm, there are changes of states. A state is anything from just finishing one incarnation and returning to the real world with lessons learned, to constructing a house on one of the levels of heaven, to receiving a golden brick. Time to Anthony was every gold brick was 1 year. That concept of time is as valid as any other. Now, to go into what one of the spirits told Reverend G. Allen, he said, we don't think of time here. We think of duration. When a spirit creates something, so let's say you create a house on the earth, 50 years, 100 years, that house will decay, right? And it will go away. And time will make the decay happen. In the spirit world, if a spirit creates a house, they say, oh, I'm going to create that one for 1,000 years, or I'll just create it for eternity. And if I want to change it later, I'll come back and change it when I wish. I will change the state of the house. So it's not a time. It's like when a flower, if someone in the spirit world cuts a flower and puts the flower in the vase, the flower doesn't get all ugly and old and degrades. It stays there, let's say, I know, for a certain amount of time where there's no time, but it stays there for a while, and then it fades away because it was not part of the original flower, and there was no will holding that flower to be what it was. Since we remember that I started the front, there's the will of the spirits, the high lords, higher spirits than us, is what keeps everything in place. And therefore, when they change their will, another high spirit comes and changes it, and it changes. That's why time is more like duration in the spirit world. Now, let's talk about pain, and the pain of advancement. So let's see what Anthony went through. The path was set. The boulder morphed into an altar, and the trees grew to ring the altar like temple columns. Anthony had created the analogy to his ascendants, a long road filled with golden opportunities to reach a divine destination. Now, Anthony would find out what it took to complete the journey. This is what he wrote. At this point, the most searing, unbearable pain tore through me, but the voice told me not to step off the path. I asked what the pain was, as it wasn't physical. It felt like, and this again sounds bizarre, but it felt like a spiritual pain. Let me stop there for a second. It's not bizarre. This is the greatest pain that lower spirits feel when they leave the earth life and they go down to the lower zone or below that, and they see what they've done wrong. If they're that advanced to even know that they've done wrong, that is real spiritual pain. So yes, it's been talked about a lot in spiritist literature. We carry on with what he wrote. The voice told me that it was the pain of the least sin I would commit against my own soul. It was conveyed to me that this didn't mean sin in any religious sense, but specifically it was the pain of the wound to my own soul that I myself would commit in my lifetime. I continued up the path, and each time I stepped, the pain was worse than the one before, until nearing the top, I told the voice I couldn't finish. So let's talk about this one. The spirit world calls pain the great teacher. We travel through multiple lives so we can learn grand lessons. We can learn not to harm others, not to desire revenge for the least slight, not to be jealous, not to take from innocence what we lust after. In other words, we learn to follow the golden rule. Every time we treat our fellow men and women in a manner we would disdain, we would wound not only the person who is the target, but more importantly, ourselves. For each transgression, we have to pay in the present or future life. We have to experience what it felt like to be on the other side of the deed we committed. Why do bad things happen to seemingly good people on this earth? The answer lies in their past lives. These are not punishments inflicted upon us, but valuable teaching moments for us to live through and to mold our character. And in fact, if you would like to learn more about how you can see the effects of your past lives, you can read my book, The Problem is the Solution. And this was all about, 7 life complications to test and teach you, in which I talk about these are some of the trials and tribulations you could be going through. And this is what may have happened in a past life. And that's why the important thing to remember through all this is when things happen to you that you don't like, is don't get angry. Don't get mad at that person that did that. That person who did that to you, or persons, they're just an actor in the play, a sign apart, intersectionality, right? As they intersect through your life, a sign apart to test you. Don't get mad at them. You can try to avoid them in the future if you like, because they're bad news maybe, but don't get angry, because what they did to you, you probably did something similar, probably worse, because the spirit world is very benign, very nice to us, to someone else in a past life. I know it doesn't sound terrible. You have to, kind of get what you deserve. I never liked that myself growing up. So our hardest periods are actually the medicine our soul requires in order to climb up that path of golden bricks to the temple. So in each stone, each brick is a symbol that he walked on of another life. Each life has its own peculiar pains and triumphs. The concept of reincarnation is not new. In the book Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, and Lao Tzu by Richard Hooper, he compares similar passages in different combinations of 4 religious prophets. He and others before him attempt to analyze who was the first to create the universal moral tenets and who borrowed what idea from whom. Now, whereas there's a lot of literature written on this, Jesus took this from Zoroaster and, so on and so forth. Look, Spiritists realize there are many similarities because each of these wonderful people, wonderful high spirits, were sent to earth to preach the same doctrine, each slightly affected by different cultures and times. Richard Hooper recounts the lessons preached to us by 3 high spirits who came to earth to reveal the process and requirements of reincarnation. This is what Jesus said about reincarnation. Be merciful that you may obtain mercy. Forgive that you may be forgiven. As you judge, so will you be judged. As you serve, so will service be done to you. And whatever you measure out, that is what will be returned to you. You read that, you think that's all within our present life. And you think, well, that doesn't happen. I know someone cheated this and they lived a great life and died a natural death. Well, that's because what Jesus said in Matthew is, there's reincarnation, there's karma. That person who died peacefully and happy, in some great beach house because they stole money from who knows how many thousands of people, wait till their next life and see where they are in maybe the lower zone or lower, right? That will all, karma is real. What did Krishna say? Everyone creates their own fate. Even life in the womb is affected by the karma from a previous life. So true. What did Buddha say? From a sound an echo returns. A body creates a shadow. So too will misery come to him who does evil works. Even Socrates said similar things. This is why, and Socrates is actually is supposed to be coming back and being incarnated to help our earth ascend. So all 3 saints, Jesus, Krishna, and Buddha, could be lifted from the doctrine of Spiritism. Our actions, and of course, all those things are all from the same headwaters, right? They're all from Jesus, who's the governor of our planet, sending Krishna, Buddha, Socrates, and others to tell us these things. Each adverse action causes a spiritual pain that we ask to be rectified in our next life. Now, let's just go over this for a second, just so I can explain this better to people. Let's see what karma really is. So karma is what happens. Karma is a whole process. And I explain karma and the whole process in several of my books. And you can also get it, Explore Your Destiny. I explain karma too. So first, the previous life, each life is recorded, right? Even your current life now, everything is recorded, everything in detail. Your current life and results from your previous life determine the trials you're given in this life. So remember that, right? This life you have now, and I talked about this in my book, The Problem is the Solution, is the result of the life you lived previously. Then the third step is your future life. As your previous life was recorded and your current life is being recorded, your future life is now actually being planned out by what you are doing now. Your present life is recorded and will be used to determine your next life. So the better you are in this life, remember, karma is not just bad things you do, it's good things you do. So karma works on everything you do. The spirit world doesn't want to punish anybody. It wants to teach. It's like the teacher. If a student is striving to do something well, even though they are failing, the teacher will encourage that student, and they'll try to make it the best they can. The same way with the spirit world. If you have a good attitude and you are trying, even though you fall back, look, I have so many people email me, write me, call me. Oh, I just failed in this. I said, I couldn't do this, and I'm not going as fast as I want. And I said, look, you are making progress. We are still humans on a planet of atonement. If we were perfect, we wouldn't be here. All we can do is make gradual progress. Don't kill yourself over this. Just try and be better a little every day. And then know full well that you will go backwards every so often. I still sometimes lose my temper and am stupid. So we're all there, and I have a lot to go. So we're all the same way. So karma is real. So then, Anthony, as Anthony was on the path and said, I can't continue, Anthony's mentor realizes that this is hard. So he's going to help him proceed. This is what Anthony wrote. The voice was kind and patient and said that it was with me and that I would finish, but I needed to learn the lessons it was teaching. I got extremely angry at this point and asked why I'd been brought here for all this time in order to experience such terrible pain. I continued to the end of the path, and with the encouragement and presence of what was now I understood to be some higher spiritual being, I reached the entrance to the tree temple and went inside and saw the only other being I saw the entire time I was there. It had its back to me. It was kneeling as though in prayer. Now, Anthony's anger was quite understandable, right? It's the same we all feel as hard times befall us. What Anthony will learn in the future is that pain serves as a concentrator. With pain, we focus on what is causing it and nothing else. We are forced to come to grips with our action. Next, Anthony was allowed to see what he would become at some future time after a long and arduous journey. This is what he wrote. I was angry again, and I rushed up to this figure, saying that I now knew that everything was real, so why did I have to experience all the pain? The figure stood up and turned around, and it was indescribable, a being of perfection, and what I can only be described as made out of pure love. I knew that this was the source of the voice. I was dumbstruck after all that had happened, and I could only say, I can see you. The being touched me on the cheek gently and said simply, and now you know it is time to go back. I was also told that the garden I had created would last there forever, and I would return there one day. Now, the very fact that Anthony questions, why did he have to suffer through the pain, proves that Anthony, as do all of us on earth, we have more to learn, more trials to experience, more lives to pay for wrongs and perform useful deeds. But he was also given a vision of the future. He saw a being of perfection. Perfection didn't arise out of nothing. Perfection was molded out of clay, which had to endure firing after firing in the white-hot oven of physical life to eradicate even the hint of a blemish. To radiate pure love, one must learn pure love in all circumstances toward all life. Andre Luis, the spirit I had mentioned earlier, who had risen to the celestial city No Solar after spending time in the lower zone, spent many Earth years accompanying spirit teams to assist garnets and indiscarnates around, under, and on the Earth. After his years of observing, Andre fully realized the need for our multiple attempts at learning in our corporeal bodies. This is what he said. Hence, the reasons for the complex activities of the evolutionary road, the countless diversities, the multiplicity of social positions, the degrees of abilities, and the level of intelligence on the various planes of life. Andre is telling us that one full life of experiences is simply not enough. To be composed of perfect love takes effort at succeeding in life while rich, poor, and middle class, while being powerful, powerless, and in between. To love all without reservation demands that we truly walk in the footsteps of many types of people from various backgrounds, classes, and cultures. For those who believe we only need one life to be pure, it is as if we wanted to be the president of a large company without ever working any other job. Of course, we must start in the mailroom and work our way up in various positions to fully comprehend how to get things done and how to survive within the culture of the organization. No matter how pious we could have started out as a new spirit, we would still need the required know how to gain our elevation. Only through rigorous trials do we have the right mixture of beliefs and knowledge to reincarnate with good prospects of success and serve as a valued worker in the spirit realm. When the balance of experience is lacking, we are less able to control the process of reincarnation and control ourselves in a physical form. Hence, the problems we may have at times with periods of depression caused by the inability to stabilize ourselves because we lack the required combination of experiences to be able to mold our thoughts in the correct manner for all situations. This frustration of controlling ourselves and trying to learn how to cope with life is familiar to any teenager. We did not know that this is a multiple lives long task. Try and be content. Even later in life, as we live within the ups and downs, we are gaining valuable training, which will carry over to the next life in very subtle ways. So, Anthony's spirit mentor didn't let him return without knowing that he would revisit the land he created, the landscape that he built with his own two hands. Unlike the earth and the physical universe, what Anthony fashioned would remain for all eternity. No sun would eventually burn out to leave his garden and altar in darkness. The thought creation would remain forever, a symbol of the reward awaiting Anthony when he shed his physical body after his trials during his life on earth. One last gift was presented to Anthony. He was allowed to see a glimpse of the spirit life to come. This is what he wrote. As I walked with the being back out of the tree temple, I saw for the first time other people coming to the garden and sitting on the grass, looking at the flowers, talking and laughing. The being smiled and said, "See what you have accomplished here?" I felt completely overwhelmed, but I was then immediately transported back into my body, which I immediately felt as being incredibly heavy and cloying and almost unnatural. The asthma attack has totally passed, and I checked the clock, which said 9:23 p.m. The entire experience had taken about 8 minutes from my initial attack to being back. I've never reported this before, as I guess most people would say it was a hallucination. I can only say it was more real than anything I have experienced in this world. What he wrote was wonderful. Anthony had the opportunity to create his own place in heaven, a paradise of his own making. He felt what it would be like when other spirits warmed his path and gardens with their love and light. He now had a goal in life. Now, let's talk about the aftermath. In his account, Anthony writes about his life after his experience. That's what he wrote. I have been visited by people as they are just after they have died, including family members and friends of my family. This has happened both in experiences whilst asleep that are very different from dreams and consciously whilst awake. I know what that sounds like. I don't regard myself as being especially religious or indeed spiritual. Bizarre as this must sound after everything I've written above, I regard myself as being a rational, down-to-earth, and practical person. I don't buy into any new stuff, etc., but the experiences I have had and continue to have are, sometimes annoyingly, real in my experience. I make no claims as to their provability, but I have passed on messages for various people in the last 15 or so years. It doesn't happen often, and I certainly do not make any personal gain from it. Quite the opposite. In some cases, I have been ridiculed, understandably, I guess, on some occasions. So there are some important points to consider in what Anthony relates. First, he regards himself as a rational, down-to-earth, practical person. This is just how he should feel. Spiritism rests on three pillars: science, philosophy, and religion. Spiritism is a dynamic doctrine. It has three aspects that work together to provide the scaffolding which encompasses the ever-growing pool of knowledge. First is philosophy. The Spirit's book laid the foundation for the relationship between the spirit world and the physical world. The eternal questions of our creation, our creator, our destiny, and our soul are all covered within Spiritism. Second is science. This is the area which certainly would have the most doubters, rightly so, for nothing has been proven to date. Modern society accepts people's beliefs in God, but only as a nod to those that need it. But what is not in question is the groundswell of studies about near-death experiences and the retention of thought after all physical brain activity has ceased. The internet now allows people to compare their stories of premonition, talking with spirits and mediums who have knowledge about personal facts which be improbable for them to know. All of these, many of us are aware of and comfortable that there is a world beyond our senses. Now, quite understandably, while others scoff as nonsense, any unexplainable event, while we mark it down to one more data point that promotes our feeling that our knowledge is limited and there are many things still unfathomable by science. For now, Spiritism leads on the information provided by mediums throughout the world. Books such as the one psychographed by Chico Xavier are continually being created with the help of the spirit world. Books which little by little reveal more about the earth, our destiny, and the complex workings of the spirit realm which looks over us. Now, third pillar is religion. To be clear, Spiritism does not consider itself to be a religion. Spiritism is a doctrine, a way of life. There are no rites, no churches, no temples, and no one who would function as a priest. Spiritism is present to reveal the basic facts of our existence. It is up to each individual to determine how that should affect how they want to live their lives. Therefore, the fact that Anthony does not regard himself as religious is perfectly understandable, for he knows that we are immortal spirits, that we are here for a purpose, and that the spirit world is a fact and not a supposition that must be supported by blind faith. He is, in fact, a realist, and he took his own information and built his own rational foundation for his current thinking. While society at large considers the foundation of his thinking to be without merit, those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, to paraphrase Jesus, recognize that our culture is vainly attempting to deny what is really there. Which brings us to the second point. He has been ridiculed. When humans don't understand something, they try to deny it, then to create an explanation that serves their purpose. When those of us mention our belief in the spirit world, we are usually thought of being slightly adulterated fools, thankfully harmless ones. We must have had a chemical reaction or a self-induced illusion is the answer most reach for. This is all fine. For those who refuse to listen, they will eventually, in the next life or the life after that, come to understand that we are on Earth are part of a grand plan, a project encompassing millions of students who are herded and guided through their pre-assigned training to make them ready for the next step. And I will close this talk with Anthony's words of wisdom when he answered the question posed by the NDERF.org site. The question was, has the experience affected your relationships, daily life, religious practices, career choices? This is his answer. I am much more understanding of others. I don't regard myself as particularly materialistic in myself, even though I work as a manager in industry. Money and things don't have a lot of meaning for me. People are the most important thing there is. That is all goes exactly with Spiritism and the Spiritist philosophy. We are interconnected. We are in this logical world. We are interconnected with other people. We are here to help other people, help ourselves, and other people grow spiritually, to take out those primitive emotions and replace those with good thinking, right, discipline, calmness, fraternity, charity, love, honesty. This is much harder. It's easy for me to say it, and believe me, I've lived it. And what I should say is I had to live gray area, right? I've had to work for companies that I didn't think of them as the paragons of virtue, I should say. And we've all had that. We've all, especially middle type managers like me that's had to do things they don't want to do. This is very difficult, and we must learn. We still have to feed our family. I understand all that, and you just have to kind of exit out of those conditions when you can. You may have to work there, 5-10 more years. You just have to do your best. And so I don't want to say, I live a pure life. I've made so many mistakes, horrible mistakes. I've treated other people badly and I've done bad, not good things. But the fact is, I'm trying to improve. And that's all that the spirit world wants, is for each person to improve. And these NDEs, near-death experiences, show this, that we can improve. And one of the things, I think, the ways we're really looking at improving is to read more and study about Spiritism. And this is why the book I'm talking about, of all these things happen in heaven and how he created this whole logical world and how he saw more hues, a lot of that I talk about the attributes of spirits and spirits in the universe, how we go through different levels of education in heaven, how we learn, how we advance from one level to another, and how when we advance, we don't just get a piece of paper, we actually get more tools in our toolbox. We get less dense and more energy. There's all sorts of information. We have been gifted so much information about heaven and what's all around it. And actually, my first book is Heaven and Below, which is more about heaven and how Jesus Christ leads us in heaven as the governor of our world. So all these things are there. They're ready for you. I put them on the shelf for you to take, to learn. This, hopefully this will say, okay, these are some of the questions I've been asking. These are weird things that happen to myself, to my aunt, to my uncle, to my mom or dad or whatever. And, they've told me these things, and yet how can these be? And the answer is there. Spiritism gives you the answer of why bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people, and why things happen to you. It's all answered. And the more you understand it, the happier you will be. So I want to say, God bless everyone. God bless.